My affair partner asked me if I'd leave him too. He didn't ask during an argument. He didn't ask while he was angry. He asked me quietly, one night, while we were lying in bed, "Do you think you'll leave me too?" I turned toward him. "What?" He stared at the ceiling. "Your husband." I didn't answer. He finally looked at me. "You left him for me." Then he asked the question that I couldn't get out of my head. "What's stopping you from doing the same thing to me?" My name is Claire. My husband's name is Daniel. And the man I cheated with was Marcus. For almost a year, I thought Marcus was the reason I finally understood what love was. It took him asking one question to make me realize I had never understood love at all. Daniel and I had been married for 11 years. We met at 26. He wasn't the kind of man who swept me off my feet. He was the kind who stayed after the excitement wore off. He remembered things. He showed up. He fixed things around the house before I even noticed they were broken. When my father got sick, Daniel spent every weekend driving 3 hours with me to visit him. When I was overwhelmed at work, he cooked dinner. When I couldn't sleep, he'd stay awake with me. I knew he loved me. I just stopped appreciating it. Our marriage became routine. And instead of asking myself why I felt restless, I blamed Daniel. "You never surprise me anymore. You don't make me feel desired. We don't have fun. You've changed." Daniel listened. Sometimes he tried. Sometimes he didn't know what to do. Then Marcus appeared. He was everything I thought I wanted. Confident, funny, spontaneous. He'd send me messages during the workday just to make me smile. He'd ask me to meet him for drinks without planning it days in advance. He made me feel like the world had suddenly become interesting again. I mistook that feeling for love. The first time he kissed me, I knew I should stop him. I didn't. The affair lasted 8 months. I became a completely different person. I lied. I hid my phone. I changed passwords. I deleted conversations. And Daniel knew something was wrong. One night, he asked me, "Is there someone else?" I stared at him. "No." He nodded, but he didn't believe me. 2 weeks later, he found the messages. There was no way out. I confessed. Daniel sat across from me at the kitchen table. He looked devastated, but he didn't yell. "Do you love him?" I cried. "I think I do." Daniel closed his eyes. Then he said, "Then go." I stared at him. "What?" "Go. You don't want to fight for me?" He looked at me. "I shouldn't have to fight someone else's battle for your heart." 3 weeks later, I moved in with Marcus, and for a while, I thought I'd made the best decision of my life. Marcus was exciting. Everything was new. We traveled. We stayed up late. We went out constantly. We laughed. We kissed. I felt free. Then 6 months passed, and something changed. There was no more secrecy, no more stolen moments, no more adrenaline. Marcus was simply Marcus. He left his clothes everywhere. He hated doing dishes. He spent money without thinking. He changed plans constantly. He could be impatient. He didn't understand why I needed quiet sometimes. And I started noticing things I'd never noticed before. The same things I'd once criticized Daniel for. One night, Marcus came home late. "Where were you?" "Out." "With who?" He looked at me. "Why does it matter?" I immediately heard myself. It sounded like Daniel. I realized I had become the person I'd once hated being. After that, Marcus became more distant. Then, one night, we were lying in bed. He stared at the ceiling. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Do you think you'll leave me too?" I turned toward him. "What?" He didn't look at me. "You left Daniel." I said nothing. "You told me you were unhappy." I was. "You told me he didn't understand you." He didn't. Marcus finally looked at me. What if one day you say the same things about me? I didn't have an answer. He continued. You said Daniel was boring. Now you complain that I'm irresponsible. You said he didn't make you feel wanted. Now you tell me I'm too obsessed with myself. You said your marriage felt like a cage. Now you tell me you miss having a quiet home. I stared at him. Are you saying you think I'll leave you? He shook his head. I'm saying I don't know why I should believe I won't become the next person you blame. That hurt, because it was true. I started crying. I don't want to leave you. Marcus looked away. You said that about Daniel, too. I had no response. That night, neither of us slept. The next morning, Marcus made coffee. Then he said, I think I need to know something. What? Why did you really leave your husband? I immediately answered. Because I wasn't happy. Marcus shook his head. No. What? You were unhappy. But that's not why you left. I stared at him. Then why? He looked at me. You left because you thought someone else could fix it. I felt something inside me crack. You didn't leave Daniel because he was terrible. You left because you believed I would make you feel different. And I did. For a while. I looked down. Then what happened? Marcus smiled sadly. Then you got used to me. I started crying. He continued. That's what scares me. Because I don't think you're unhappy with me. I think you're unhappy whenever something becomes familiar. That sentence stayed with me. For days, I started thinking about my marriage. Not romantically. Honestly. Daniel hadn't suddenly become boring. He had simply become familiar. And I'd mistaken familiarity for failure. I had done the same thing with Marcus. The only difference was that Marcus had figured it out before I did. A week later, Marcus told me he needed space. I panicked. Are you leaving me? He shook his head. I don't know. That answer terrified me. Because for the first time, I understood what Daniel had felt. The uncertainty, the helplessness, the fear that the person you loved had already made a decision you couldn't control. I wanted to beg Marcus to stay. But I stopped myself. Because begging wasn't love. It was fear. Marcus moved into a friend's apartment. I stayed alone. And I finally did something I'd avoided for years. I went to therapy. The first few sessions were uncomfortable. I wanted answers. Instead, I got questions. Why did I need constant excitement? Why did attention mean so much to me? Why did I interpret routine as rejection? Why did I blame other people whenever I felt dissatisfied? Eventually, I found the answer. I was terrified of feeling ordinary. Somewhere along the way, I'd convinced myself that if my life wasn't exciting, it wasn't meaningful. So, whenever the excitement disappeared, I assumed the relationship was broken. Daniel wasn't the problem. Marcus wasn't the problem. The problem was that I kept expecting other people to create a version of me I liked. 3 months later, Marcus came back. We met at a coffee shop. He looked tired. I missed you, he said. I missed you too. He smiled. Are you going to leave me? I laughed through my tears. I don't know. He looked surprised. That's not the answer I expected. I shook my head. Said that. I don't want to promise you something I can't control. He nodded. Good. I don't want you staying because you're afraid of being alone. I don't want to stay because I'm afraid you'll leave. We sat there quietly. Then Marcus said, maybe that's the first honest conversation we've ever had. We didn't immediately move back in together. We started dating again. Slowly. No grand promises. No pretending everything was fixed. Just two people trying to figure out whether what we had could survive without the fantasy. Eventually, it did. But something changed. I stopped measuring love by excitement. I stopped expecting Marcus to constantly entertain me. I learned to appreciate quiet. I learned to communicate before resentment built up. And most importantly, I stopped comparing him to Daniel. Years later, I ran into Daniel. He was remarried. He looked happy. We talked for a few minutes. Then I told him something I'd wanted to say for years. You were never the reason I was unhappy. Daniel looked at me. I know. I smiled. I didn't. He nodded. Sometimes it takes losing something to understand it. I thought about that. Then I said, I'm sorry. He smiled. I know. We said goodbye. I never went back to Daniel. I stayed with Marcus, but I don't think Marcus was the happy ending. The happy ending was finally understanding why I had nearly destroyed every relationship I'd ever cared about. Marcus once asked me, do you think you'll leave me too? At the time, I thought the question was about him. It wasn't. It was about me. He was asking whether I would ever stop running whenever love became ordinary. And I finally understood the answer. I couldn't promise Marcus that nothing would ever change. I couldn't promise we'd never struggle. I couldn't promise I'd never be unhappy. But I could promise something else. If I became unhappy, I'd talk. If I felt restless, I'd look inward before looking elsewhere. And if love ever became difficult, I wouldn't automatically assume that meant love was over, because I'd finally learned the difference between losing feelings and losing the fantasy. My affair partner asked me if I'd leave him too. Years ago, I would have been offended by the question. Now, I'm grateful he asked, because it forced me to confront the pattern I'd been too afraid to see. I hadn't been searching for the right man. I'd been searching for the right feeling, and feelings change. Love isn't supposed to keep you constantly excited. Sometimes it's quiet, sometimes it's boring, sometimes it's difficult, sometimes it's ordinary, and sometimes ordinary is exactly where real love begins.